So Mob just did a pretty fun live stream. They hung out for a few hours playing some Project Playtime, and some of the devs and other people that work in the studio answered some of our questions. They hung out and chatted to us, and there were some very, very interesting pieces of information that were put forward for both Project Playtime and also Chapter 3. Something that I am absolutely hotly anticipating. I can't wait for it. I'm really excited to have more content to make because we've had another bit of a content drought through this summer, so I'm looking forward to having more things to theorize over. But there were some very interesting things about Chapter 3 in this live stream. Now, of course, that does mean that these are potential spoilers, especially for the mechanics of Chapter 3. So if you don't want those spoilers, this is your one warning. Now, I do want to say this right now. The devs and the other people that work at Mob had a lot of questions that they couldn't answer. There were a lot of people asking for the release date of Chapter 3. A lot of people were asking for major plot points of the game to be spoiled. Now, of course, they couldn't answer these questions. There were many, many questions that they couldn't answer. And this does mean, unfortunately, we still don't have a confirmed release date for Chapter 3. But what we do have is some very interesting little tidbits of information that they put forward, some little clues and some things that I think are definitely worth talking about. So the very first thing I want to talk about is this Huggy Wuggy render. Now, this is just a render of Huggy Wuggy. It is, you know, a piece of artwork, if you will, but it's also very interesting that yet again, they chose to use this one. Now, this is new. They confirmed this is a new one, and Huggy Wuggy is the kind of like the poster boy of Poppy Playtime. However, this could be a little bit of a hint. Now, I've talked previously about the idea that Huggy Wuggy is still alive. We know that he fell quite a far way, and we did see that he was bleeding as he did so, but we don't know how tough Huggy is. We have a lot of evidence to suggest that he could still be alive, especially after Chapter 2. Something very, very interesting about this is, first of all, this is incredibly scary, or it's much more scary than previous renders we've had of Huggy. Huggy's usually shown as being this kind of goofy, lovable character, although yes, he does have his scary side. This one looks much more sinister to me, and I think it's the eyes. I think the eyes not having any white parts is what makes this look worse. That, and of course the teeth and the well, you know, this part. But it really does look a lot scarier, but it also, with what they've also said in the live stream, it could also be a little subtle hint. Now, they did say later on, I'm going to come to this shortly, they did say in the live stream that Chapter 3 is going to contain both new characters, plural, again, we'll come back to that, but also returning characters. Which returning characters could that be? Now, Poppy is an obvious answer. We saw Poppy was still around at the end of Chapter 2, but Mommy wasn't. So I don't think it's going to be Mommy. And how many other characters have we actually met in Poppy Playtime? Not that many. So I really do think this could be a subtle hint that we are going to see Huggy Wuggy again in Chapter 3. And, well, it looks like he might be out for blood. Well, let's be honest, out for more blood, but it looks like he might be very, very angry with us. He seemed to be kind of playful in Chapter 1, but I don't think he's going to be playful in Chapter 3. This render is just, in my opinion, more evidence that Mob games aren't done with Huggy. They keep making things for him. They made the VHS for him. Now they've made this render for him. Why do they keep bringing Huggy back up? I think it's because literally Huggy's being brought back up, but that's just a theory for today. Now, like I said, there was new Project Playtime details, and there was also Chapter 3 details. I'm going to go through the Project Playtime details first, so we can, you know, save the best for last, if you will. But some of the details from the live stream, we are going to get some new maps for Project Playtime. 2 new maps, in fact, which is very interesting, considering we already have 3, and each map is a very distinct, different area of the factory. We are actually kind of running out of places that they could do, and one area that I really want them to do a map for is the labs of the factory, somewhere in the innovation wing. That would be so interesting because they have actually confirmed that there are some Chapter 3 hints in Project Playtime right now. If you go and play Project Playtime, some of these hints that we've been looking at and theorizing over are definitely connected to Chapter 3. We don't know exactly which ones, they didn't confirm, but they did say there are more than we think, meaning that there are possible ones that we haven't found yet. Perhaps content creators who do videos on Poppy Playtime and Project Playtime, maybe we haven't actually found everything related to Chapter 3. And I did say that it seemed like this last update added more little things and little hints in there. So it's nice to get a direct confirmation that there are definitely hints to Chapter 3 in Project Playtime right now. Although again, not sure which ones. But the 2 new maps are coming. One is apparently nearly ready to be playtested, but they didn't tell us what they are yet. But it's nice to see that there are going to be new maps which hopefully contain more lore. And maybe this is going to be tied into when we get our next phone call. Now, something very, very interesting is that they have potentially confirmed the latest monster or the next monster to be playable in Project Playtime, and they did confirm that PJ Pugapilla is in the prototype stage. Now, I find this very interesting because of all the characters, of all the monsters that we could possibly get, PJ Pugapilla seems like an incredibly complicated one to animate and to bring to life in a multiplayer game, but this is something that people have been asking quite heavily since Project Playtime launched is, are we going to get more monsters? You know, which ones are we going to get? And it does seem like PJ Pugapilla is the next one. Now, this isn't a direct confirmation. They did say that PJ Pugapilla is definitely in the prototype stage, which doesn't mean that they'll actually be able to do it, but who knows? They're trying to do it, and that is the main piece of information here. As well as these new maps, we are going to be getting new game modes as well eventually. They've already teased this in phase 2, but they have said they are working on new game modes. New game modes are something that they are thinking about, something that they would like to do, but of course they want to make sure that the main game mode, the classic mode as they call it, is the priority, and that one is completely polished, and they're still working on that with balancing and things like that, so they want to work on that the most, but they definitely have ideas of other game modes. They talked about incorporating the hide and seek element into the main game mode a bit more rather than having a separate mode for hide and seek, but they also talked about things like tag mode and perhaps even more of a combat focused mode as just ideas that they're running around. So the idea that they're thinking about these different modes is very good. It's something that I've wished Dead by Daylight would do, for example, and they never did. So more modes is a good idea, and it's nice to see that they're thinking about them. They also said that they're thinking about doing more events as well. They said specifically more events are coming, and they also said that they're thinking about something for players to be able to spend their tickets on. If you play Project Playtime regularly, you probably have quite a lot of tickets. They did say they considered doing powers in the game, adding powers that you could buy, one-time use powers, for an example, power-ups, think of it that way. But they said it seemed a little bit unfair since some people might have a bunch of tickets and some people might have no tickets, so it seemed like a bit unfair. But they're considering ways for you to spend your tickets. So if you are playing a lot of Project Playtime, that's probably very good news for you. Alright, fine, let's get over to the Chapter 3 details. I know that's what you're all here for. There were quite a few juicy little details in this live stream, and there were plenty of questions asked, and honestly, the devs did a really good job of not spoiling anything because, you know, that would just ruin my experience for Chapter 3. I want to go in and I want to be able to find things for myself, but they did give us some nice little teasers and some nice little information. So first of all, they were asked about more teasers or ARGs. Somebody asked in the chat, are we going to get more teasers or ARGs before Chapter 3? And the devs did say, they did confirm, stuff is coming. Now, I've already talked about the VHS tapes that we've had on Mob's YouTube channel, and these are, in my opinion, confirmed to be related to Chapter 3 because they use the tags for Chapter 3. So yeah, spoilers, I'm pretty sure these are all teasers anyway, but they did say we're going to be getting more teasers. Now, this, in my opinion, does mean that we're still a little bit away from the release of Chapter 3. We haven't had the full trailer yet or anything like that, but honestly, I'm happy to wait till the game is done. I'd rather it be the best product it can be. And speaking of the product being the best that it can be, the devs actually gave us a bit more insight into what they actually think about their own product. They spoke about Chapter 3 being bigger than Chapter 2, which Chapter 2 was already considerably bigger than Chapter 1. It was a massive upgrade in most aspects, in my opinion. So to hear that Chapter 3 is going to be even bigger is probably why it's taken so long to develop. And of course, if you haven't heard, people keep saying that Project Playtime may have influenced the development of Chapter 3, but they have confirmed in this live stream that no, they are two completely separate teams that are working on Chapter 3 and Project Playtime. So Chapter 3 is taking longer, it seems, because it's bigger and they want to do more with it. So that's a great thing in my opinion. They also, and this is my favorite part of the entire stream, they doubled down on the scary. They said that Chapter 3 is the scariest chapter, in their words, by a long shot. Now, I actually called them out on this one and I said, please make it as scary as you can. I'm throwing down the gauntlet.
One might already be kind of obvious to some people who have been following us, but after, I mean, I've playtested Chapter 3 a lot, and it is definitely the scariest chapter by a long shot. Oh, hello, Tericho. Just saying, bring on the horror in Chapter 3, scare me please. Careful what you wish for.
That's the plan.
If this is the scariest chapter like you promised, I will be very happy. I love scary horror. I love being scared, so I'm super excited for this. It will make my playthrough more interesting. It will make the clips on Twitter and YouTube and stuff more interesting. I want you to scare me. Now, on that same note, the devs said they even got scared. They got jump scared in the own game in playtesting. So that should tell you something. If the devs are getting jump scared by their own game, that should be a good sign. But continuing this theme, they even said that there is going to be a new grab pack hand mechanic. Now, they actually did say that we're not going to lose our hand like we did in chapter 2. It's going to be something apparently more complex and completely different, but there will be a new mechanic, and in their words, this new mechanic, which is very unique, is going to tie into the horror. Now, I have said maybe there's something to do with the gas in chapter 3. We've had a lot of, hints and evidence about this gas, so maybe there's going to be a new gas mechanic, but it does seem like this new grab pack mechanic is going to be integral to the gameplay. In chapter 2, we got the new mechanic, which was the swinging mechanic, and we also got the electric mechanic with the green hand, so those were new mechanics, and they were cool. I liked them. So the new mechanics in chapter 3, though, are going to somehow tie into the horror of the game. Now, I really don't know what this could be, like, just off the top of my head. Are we going to, like, cover our face with the grab pack hand? I don't know, it's a silly idea. I have no clue. I have no clue how it's going to tie into the horror. Maybe it's something to do with being chased, something that they did allude to in this live stream as well. Maybe it's going to be something to do with that, but I don't know. I think it's really cool that they are really tying the grab pack hand mechanics into the horror. I'm very excited for that. And I would like to say, once again, bring it on, devs. I can't wait. But on this same theme, apparently one of the VHS tapes in chapter 3, now they did confirm that there's going to be at least one, but they also seem to hint that there's going to be multiple, because they talked about the idea that these VHS tapes, they're going to turn them into real VHS tapes in person, and then they're going to report them digitally back into the game, which is something that they didn't do in chapter 1 and 2. They're all completely digital, but they said that they wanted to make these VHS tapes feel much more realistic, and so they're actually going to have, if it all works out, they're actually going to have actual, VHS effects applied to them. So they might be a little bit more scuffed, for an example. VHS, if you're not old enough to remember VHS, which was great at the time, then it's not as good. The quality's not as good. The visuals are pretty crap compared to modern, HD graphics. And the sound was also not great either. I feel like this is going to make these VHS tapes feel much more authentic, because right now they do kind of feel, they feel a little bit faked. So we'll see how that pans out. But they also said that one of the VHS tapes in chapter 3 is going to be very scary. And they also said that this one's going to be so big that we're going to be talking about it for a long time after chapter 3. So I'm going to guess that this contains some major plot twist or something very shocking that we're not expecting, something that we're definitely going to remember. Their words, to quote them, were big secrets. So we've already had, quite a few what I would consider big secrets being sort of hidden in the game or given to us throughout the game. So I'm really interested to see what this exact VHS tape is, but it sounds like we're going to know exactly which one it is when we see it. And again, it's supposedly going to be quite a scary VHS, which is also very interesting because they haven't really been all that scary. The one at the end of chapter 1 was kind of, had the screams in the background, but I wouldn't say any of them have been scary. So we'll see. I'm again very intrigued by that one. Now, as I said earlier, the devs did confirm that chapter 3 is going to be bigger than chapter 2, which is fantastic because, again, more content, more theories to make, more game for us to play, and hopefully that means that we'll have, longer that we can actually create content on chapter 3. But they also confirmed that there's going to be both new characters, which they said characters specifically, so that's also very interesting because chapter 1 had basically one character. We had Poppy right at the end, so I guess you could say 2. Chapter 2 had Poppy, Kissy, and Mommy Longlegs, as well as a couple of little, minor characters like PJ and Bonzo. So chapter 3 having new characters makes a lot of sense. I think there's going to be quite a few, but then they also said returning characters. Now, we could speculate who those returning characters could be. We know that Kissy is probably going to be in chapter 3 because we saw her, that she is alive and well in chapter 2, and we also have evidence to suggest that Kissy does sort of belong in the playcare area. But again, I think this may have been a very cheeky hint that we're going to see Huggy in chapter 3. We saw Huggy, I guess you could say, die or fall or whatever in chapter 1, but we also saw the blue fur in chapter 2, which means in my head implies either Huggy climbed back up or somebody, you know, dragged him back up, maybe 1006 or maybe somebody else. But we do see this weird sort of cooperation between the toys in a lot of the, especially a lot of the newer stuff. So there's nothing to say, you know, for example, it could have been the little Huggies. The little Huggies could have helped him up, or it could have been another toy completely. It could have even been Kissy. We don't know. It could have been any number of toys that helped him back up, or it could have just dragged himself. He could just be stronger than we think. Either way, though, I really do believe we're going to see Huggy. This is just a hunch. This is just a theory, a Tericho theory. No, I'm not making that joke. This is just a hunch, though, but I really do think we're going to see Huggy in Chapter 3. I think this was the big hint. And the fact that they said we're going to see returning characters, yes, I'm sure we're going to see Poppy. Yes, I'm pretty sure we're also going to see Kissy. But I really do think they're setting up Chapter 3 to be this almost like this. I don't want to use like the Marvel thing, but it seems like we're going to have all of these little characters that are all going to come together in Chapter 3, and we're going to have some more interactions with them all, and I'm really excited to see that. But I'm stating it now for the record, I'm expecting Huggy in Chapter 3, so you can say if I'm right or wrong after we got our hands on it, but returning characters was the key here. Another really little interesting detail that they talked about was the idea that the environment in Chapter 3 is going to be somehow related to liminal spaces. Now, if you don't know what liminal spaces are, they are the idea that normal spaces that you would usually expect to be busy and full of life can become incredibly creepy when they're empty or deserted. Things like abandoned malls or theme parks can be kind of creepy and haunting. And this was even the inspiration for the series The Backrooms. If you've never watched The Backrooms, I highly recommend it. It's all on YouTube. It's a great series. But the devs have confirmed that Chapter 3's environment took at least some inspiration from these such places. Apparently, the environmental artists, the environmental devs, are fans of this kind of idea, and they've tried to incorporate that idea into the environment of the game, which you can kind of see that in Chapter 1 and 2. In fact, I believe Chapter 1 did this quite well. The factory was kind of creepy, just being empty and abandoned, you know, all these things that just felt like they were just left in the middle of a shift, right? It kind of had this weird feeling to it, kind of always puts you on edge, and I like that. But they did say that they're kind of going a little bit more into that in Chapter 3, and I'm really excited to see how that applies to Playcare, because again, Playcare already sounds like an incredibly creepy place, with the implications of this being where the orphans were. We don't know what happened to them. We don't know if some of them survived, whether some of them got turned into toys, whether some of them got eaten. We have no clue. I have a theory on it that I've not released yet. I know I keep saying this, but you know, bear with me. But I like this idea of liminal spaces, and I think that it's going to be really cool to see this in Chapter 3, which again is supposedly going to be the scariest chapter yet. So I'm guessing it's going to be very dark, both figuratively and literally, and I'm very excited to see this liminal space idea explored a little bit more in Chapter 3. Now, one tiny little detail to end off this video is we got one solid confirmation about Huggy Wuggy and the other toys in the factory. Now, if you remember back to Huggy Wuggy's VHS tape, there was this whole sequence where Huggy was loose in the woods, and we found this dead deer on the floor, which looked like it had definitely been mauled by Huggy, but the devs did confirm that Huggy actually ate the deer, or at least ate some of the deer. He had a little bit of a little bit of snack, a little bit of venison, if you will. Now, this is interesting for so many reasons, but without going into a full theory in this video, it is a confirmation that these toys, these dolls, they do eat other things other than humans. And it does seem, especially now we have a little bit of a confirmation that this hunger was, at least in Boxy Boo, this hunger was put there deliberately by Harley Sawyer. It does seem like this hunger is not necessarily discriminate. It's not like they only eat, certain people that they don't like. It seems like they'll eat anything almost. It seems, again, very animalistic. Like these toys are acting on their basic instincts, and they're either eating because they're hungry or they're eating just because, it's the only thing that they know. But either way, the confirmation that Huggy did eat this deer, not just kill it, is very interesting, and that could lead into some of our theories and give us a bit more of a clue about exactly what's going on with these dolls. Again, it seems very odd that this kind of hunger was being put into these dolls on purpose by Sawyer, but again, he does seem like a bad guy, so more theories I'm sure that we can do in the future. So these were most of the interesting details in this live stream. Like I say, if you want to go and watch it, the whole VOD is available on YouTube. I would highly recommend it. It was actually a really good time. Like I say, lots of questions they couldn't answer, which is a good thing because we don't want them to answer these questions. We want to be surprised and excited by Chapter 3. And on that note, I've said it before, but I'm going to say it one final time. I am absolutely, at the moment, kind of taking my time with YouTube. I'm not stressing myself out about making videos. If a fun game comes out and I want to cover it, I'm going to cover it, but I'm not stressing myself out about making loads of videos until chapter 3 comes out. I'm kind of saving my energy, my creative energy, if you will, because I know I'm going to be doing video after video after video for chapter 3. We're going to be doing at least a playthrough, a bunch of theories, a things you might have missed video. There's going to be tons and tons and tons of videos. And until we get more interesting games, like Amanda the Adventurer was really great, but until we get more stuff like that, I'm just not stressing about it. So, you know, sub if you want to sub. If you don't want to sub, if you want to unsubscribe because I'm taking a bit of a break, that's fine too. Whatever you want to do, honestly, at this point. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this one. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.